Hey, good morning, Ram family. It's Dr. Kuhn. I wanted to talk today about quarantine, our quarantine protocol for the 2020-2021 school year in Mineral Wells ISD. The main thing you need to know is there are actually two different reasons to quarantine, and those two different reasons have two different lengths of quarantine required time. So the first reason you would quarantine is if you're sick, you have symptoms, or you've tested positive for COVID-19. If you have symptoms, we want you to go get a test if it's at all possible. We understand not everyone's going to be able to do that, but if you can, if you have COVID symptoms, we want you to test. So when you have COVID symptoms or you've tested positive for COVID, there is a 10-day quarantine, minimum 10-day quarantine. After 10 days, if your symptoms are gone and you've been fever-free without medicine for 24 hours, then you can come back to school or work. That's when you've been sick, either with symptoms or with the disease itself. The other type of quarantine is when you've been exposed. And it's a longer quarantine, it's 14 days. And I know that's weird. You would think if you were sick, that would be a longer quarantine than if you were just exposed. But this virus has an incubation period. And the way, in my mind, that I understand that is that you may be exposed today, and it's like a seed gets planted, and that seed won't sprout until sometime within the next 14 days. So some people may get start showing symptoms immediately, and some people it may be 13 days down the road. So if you've been exposed and there's a possibility that you've caught COVID-19 from an infected individual, you've got to stay in isolation for 14 days rather than 10. So the 10 days versus 14 days has been very confusing for a lot of people, myself included, as I've tried to figure all this stuff out. But remember, 14 days, the longer quarantine period, that is for exposure while you're waiting to see if the virus incubates within your system. And the 10 days is when you've actually had COVID and you've been through it, and that's you fighting your way through it. Now, there are people who can't come back after 10 days because sometimes it takes longer to recover and those sorts of things. But that's the main thing I want to point out today is the two different types of quarantine. If you'll look in our MWISD prevention and response protocol, you will see the details, fine-tuned type details related to quarantine. But the main point I wanted to get across today is if you're sick, if you've got symptoms or you've tested positive, you're going to have to stay home for 10 days, at least 10 days, and you can only come back after 10 days after the symptoms started, and you're 24 hours without fever, without taking medicines to make fever go away, and your symptoms have gotten better. But if you've been exposed, it's 14 days. And while you're waiting out that 14 days, if symptoms appear, then that starts the other type of quarantine. So it's just understand that. It's a little bit complicated, but it's important we all understand this. So take a look at the protocol, rewatch this video, but make sure you understand the two different types of quarantine in our quarantine protocol. Thanks for all your cooperation. Again, like I've said in all these videos, our goal is to keep our RAMs safe. That's our students, it's our staff, it's our visitors. We want to do everything we can to keep you safe so that we can keep educating kids. Thank you.